Welcome. Hello, John.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. So, welcome into this first ever edition of the Great Cricket Debate. I'm Andrew McLean, and my co-host is John Morrison, a very good friend of mine. And I was just thinking, Mystery, we've not been on air together for about, well, it's 2006 was the last time. So I can't do my maths very well, but what's that, about 17 years?
Something like that. That makes me about 103.
Well, you were the last person to score a century at the SCG for New Zealand. What have
Yeah,
you made of this whole David Warner thing? This whole kind of I'm going to retire mid-season, knowing full well that he'd never get to run in New Zealand. Like what's that all about?
oh well, David Warner's David Warner, and I have to say the most vomit-inducing moment of watching and following cricket this week has to be his wild celebrations when he got 100. I think if his cricket doesn't go well next year, he's an absolute shoo-in, mate, for the lead of the gay Mardi Gras parade in Sydney. I mean, you couldn't, the jumping in the air and blowing kisses and strutting and preening like a little cock sparrow round the park. I mean, what happened to dignity? What happened to a bit of decorum? I mean, yeah, well, I think that's why he gets into so much trouble because basically everyone dislikes him intensely.
It's quite
um,
it's funny you should say that because I thought that his press conference at the end of day one was actually pretty good. I don't know what he was on. Was he like 70 not out or 80 not out or something? And he just said, well, look, my job's to produce runs for the side, right? And that's what he said publicly. But then when the moment came along, and bearing in mind, I've been in Pakistan earlier this year when Kane Williamson just quietly got to 200 and barely even raised his bat. This guy just goes into this like maniac mode, and I just don't really understand it. And what was interesting is I stumbled across something the other day when he played his first match. I think it was either for because bearing in mind he got picked from club cricket, right? And I think it was his first match for, it might have been for Australia or it might have been for New South Wales. I don't really remember, but he came across as a completely different guy to this absolute moron that he is now. What the hell's happened to this guy?
well, I think a lot of these top athletes, and I'll put them in that category, and really in terms of income, suddenly a guy that's not the sharpest tool in the shed is making millions, and he's getting high profile. So everything's put to the test, and he doesn't stand up to it too well. Yeah, sure, no one can doubt that he can hit the ball well, and he's been devastating at times, and all those sorts of things. But I think that celebration actually illustrated the sort of guy that he is, and it's not a very pretty picture. And he's the sort of guy I think in 10 years' time um, that will probably pick up the paper one day and there'll be some sort of tragic story about something or his money's all gone or something like that. But yeah, what makes him tick, I don't know. The only thing, obviously, that keeps him around, and it is the thing in cricket, is scoring lots of runs. But obviously, a lot of the Australians have had enough of him. But Mitchell
Yeah.
Johnson coming out in the last few weeks, I think he's reflecting what a lot of other players actually haven't got the guts to say.
Yeah, well, and also as I alluded to earlier, I mean, who retires in the middle of a season? I mean, who? I can't remember anyone. I mean, I know Damien Martin did because he had a really bad test at Adelaide, and he basically said, "Sorry guys, I'm out of here." But Warner's sort of made this whole summer about himself. And no one does that. I mean, if you think about it, in our case, being New Zealanders, I mean, Ross Taylor kind of got shoeboxed into retiring against, who was it, Bangladesh or Sri Lanka? Bangladesh, I think it was. I mean, Warner has kind of created this picture for himself, and I just don't really get it. But I'll tell you one thing. Do you remember during the World Cup they played a match, and there was like all these fireworks going on, and every other of his teammates was saying, "What the hell's these fireworks?" Like, it was distracting. I think it was Glenn Maxwell said it was distracting. It really put me off. Then Warner went on social media saying, "Oh, it's amazing, it's amazing." It's just like the guy's a Fruit Loop.
Yeah, I think that's the short end of it, mate. And even the Aussies who seem to have their track record's not great. And of course, the thing paper thing, he was in thick as thieves on that. And I don't think the worst's come out about that yet, because without sort of dredging into the past, there's no way in the world that only three members of the side knew about that, particularly the bowlers. So it makes a bit of a joke. But then they go and get a nice, clean-cut young chap to sort of clean up the whole image. And he's been sending pictures of his private parts to the members of the staff. I mean, it's a strange old culture over there, and that they sort of live in the hype of it all. Um, they are a very good side. Let's face it, they've just given Pakistan a hiding, and in front of no one, I might add. There's no one interested over there anymore. Well,
Well,
they're only interested in.
but mate, let's get on to that, right? So, for whatever reason, the Cricket Australia decided not to play the first test of the series in Brisbane, which they normally do. You and I were there in 2004 for the New Zealand game, which obviously we don't want to talk about. But that has been the starting point. So for some whatever reason, they put it in Perth in this particular series, and it's been a non-stop thing on Twitter about the lack of the crowd. I mean, what do you sort of make of that? Are they trying to sort of bring back someone from your era like Dennis Lilly and so try and make cricket sexy in Perth, or what the hell's going on?
Well, I think the irony is, in many ways, if you look at it from an ironic point of view, is the bigger the stadium has got, the smaller the crowds. And the Wacker was, in my mind, a very nice cricket ground. In actual fact, I see the figures. They had about 16,000 people there on day one, with a 60 or 70,000 capacity. Um, Again, I'd have to say that I'm not sure that big stadiums are great for cricket. I like the more intimate cricket grounds, and I know it's an AFL ground and what have you. And that's probably the principal reason it's that size. But yeah, I just wonder, Andrew, and I followed New Zealand and Bangladesh, and there was no one there. I mean, they've got a population of 160 million living on a postage stamp, and in the middle of Dhaka, there was simply no one there. Um, and then even in India, the year before, when New Zealand was there, now maybe it's because of New Zealand and no one was interested, but there was virtually no one at the test matches. The only test matches that seem to attract is the Ashes, which everyone turns up to, or India, Australia.
Well, or you could
Apart
probably
from
you could probably add pretty much every England home test, and it was quite
yeah,
interesting. This is a very good lead into something that I'm very passionate about, John. In England, more or less, bearing in mind I lived there for 13 years, I lived next to Lords for 10 of those. England test matches generally sell out, at least up until day 4. And the 5th day is kind of, you've got to buy the tickets on the day. But in
right.
England, test cricket's alive and well. I take your point. I actually, just as an aside, I read that the Saturday of the New Zealand-Australia match at the Basin Reserve, which will be in early March next year, is actually already sold out. So that's great. And obviously New Zealand has a different attitude towards cricket, that we play at smaller grounds and stuff like that. But I think your point's a good one. But at the same time, there is a massive, massive issue at the moment that I'm seeing is like, how is it if you've got very few people, I was going to use a stronger word, but if you've got very few people actually going to the match, why is it that suddenly, people like BBC can't even get rights to a series? It's really mad.
Yeah, well, you've been fairly close to this rights issue on radio and I suppose television as well. But television is obviously very popular because it's a great medium for television. What other sport stops, every 4.5 minutes for an ad break, and also you've got massive audiences, and it's an easier game perhaps to watch on TV than it is at the ground. But just going back to that Basin Reserve thing, yes, it's sold out, but the safety people in New Zealand have gone nuts now, and there's only about 7 or 8 thousand people
Is that
allowed
right?
on the ground.
Because the capacity of the
It's
Basin
all
Reserve is about 13,500, right?
used to be. It's not now. About eight at the most.
Don't
Um,
don't
and
don't
that's
broad, don't broadcast that too widely. We want the whole world to know that the Basin Reserve is the best cricket ground in the whole world. Okay, so we'll cut that one off there, John.
Oh, that's indicated by the fact it's sold out, and it is the best, certainly the best in New Zealand. It's a ridiculous argument. I mean, that gets me onto Eden Park, which every side in the world that comes to New Zealand can't believe that when they walk out on Eden Park and see the straight boundaries of 40 metres, you could spit to the boundary with the wind probably. Um, it just makes a joke of it. They're playing across a rugby field.
Well,
And
you can kind of imagine if Joss Butler was facing Rod Latham right now, Tom's father, Rod Latham, who was in the 1992 World Cup, he'd just have to nick it, go for six, right? And Rod bowls slower than me.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, there are a number of nicks that go for six. And basically, your mid off is actually on the boundary. It's sort of ridiculous. And of course, it's hopeless for spinners trying to set a field where, the spinners work on the basis that they have some room to move. So, they can toss it up a bit and induce a false shot and get players caught on the boundary. Eden Park, you can't because the boundary's only 40 metres away.
Yeah, but
It's
John,
surprisingly.
but John, isn't there more to the story? I mean, I know you're having a crack at Eden Park probably as an international venue, but I also read the other day that they decided to play domestic cricket there. But I also heard, or via you actually, that the Auckland City Council is going to build a new ground. So what the hell's going on in Auckland?
Oh, well, I think that's a very good question. And I don't think anyone quite knows. The debate is certainly alive that they're looking at. And I think central government, the change of government's been pretty healthy here. And they're keen on sport, unlike the other mob. Um, and
They're keen
uh,
on keeping everyone at home to do like buy your own like fitness trainer, right? I was in Hamilton for 2 weeks and locked in an enclosure, so I understand your point completely when I came back to New Zealand. But anyway, carry on.
Oh, well, they're spending millions, Sport New Zealand, on push play and things like that, as if you're going to get up off your couch, put your KFC aside, and run up to the top of the nearest hill, which you don't do. But they have very little interest in organised, um, team sport like cricket and rugby and football and netball, etc.
So why has the
So
government
they
actually stepped in though, mate? Why have they decided to make something in Auckland? Because I mean, for our international listeners, which of course is an international show, you'll think, okay, Auckland's a city of 1.5 million people. They can't even get a cricket ground together for like regular cricket. What's going on there, John? I mean, I know you're a former city councillor as well, so you probably have a bit more insight than most.
But I wasn't a city councillor in Auckland. I was a city councillor in Wellington. And of course, we've got two grounds for cricket, although I've never been a fan of the stadium. The Basin Reserve's a lovely ground and should be, all cricket should be
No,
played there.
but my point is though is that you understand what
Mm.
goes on, sort of behind the scenes.
Oh, yes. Well, how are you going to get, when you get the councils are elected, there are a whole lot of bods from different backgrounds, and they've gone more and more sort of ideology based and green based and anti-organised stuff. And so building cricket grounds has not been a priority. And I think Auckland's been a classic case of that. Also, they were badly split up in the sense that they had about 8 different councils. So they all built poor stadiums like Mount Smart or, over on the North Shore. And they're all over the show and none of them were any good.
So
And
why has the government stepped in now then?
well, they haven't stepped in yet, but they're indicating that they'd like to see a decent cricket ground in Auckland. So, I mean, they've only been in for a couple of weeks, Andrew. So, give them some time. It's just it just captured my attention because Eden Park's so ridiculous for cricket, um, and it always amazed me as a member of the Basin Reserve Trust that we'd get moans from the ICC about the sight screens weren't high enough, or the dressing rooms weren't big enough, or the medical room wasn't any good, and they'd measure the outfield and the boundaries. Then they go to Auckland and play on a postage stamp. I mean, how did they get away with it under the ICC rules? I don't know, but mate, I'd hold all tickets on that. I wouldn't take that as a dead set cert. And
Well,
you know,
I know there's one other issue related to New Zealand cricket that's annoying you immensely, and just for listeners' benefit, we didn't really introduce ourselves properly at the top of the show, but John's a former international, played in many years. What would you play? About 20 odd tests, scored 100 at the SCG, commentated while he was still playing, etc., etc. So played in Pakistan in 1976, which we always refer to when he hit Wasim Akram for a then world record. Oh, not Wasim Akram, Imran Khan for a then world record.
no,
Most runs off an over, third over of the second innings. So
it's still a world record. I'll have you know, Andrew.
I know, because they don't bowl 8-ball overs anymore, John.
Exactly. No, he
But
bounced me every ball, and I of course those are the days without helmets when men were men. And
so actually, just
um,
on there, I mean, they'll be very interesting for, Karachi's a fairly well. I was there earlier this year, as you know, but I don't remember any of the Pakistan bowlers like Naseem Shah, or I don't think Shaheen was playing, but I don't remember like a barrage of bouncers. Like what was going on in that match in 1976? Because Imran Khan got suspended from bowling in that match after you got out.
yeah, well, yeah, they scored about 1 million, and we were in some difficulty. But yeah, he just bounced me every ball in that particular over, and I hadn't been getting any runs. I'd certainly lost some weight. I'd had a few glasses of water, which wasn't very sensible, and and I tried to hook everyone, and I got 2 sixes and 3 fours, and I subsequently learned that was a world record, and no one's ever taken any notice of it. And what's more, it's going to stand forever. I mean, and poor old Imran, and he's in jail now, isn't he? I mean, it's a dangerous job being a prime minister in Pakistan, because Ali Bhutto was the prime minister when we were there, and of course his demise was at the end of a rope. And then his daughter Benedi's, wasn't it?
No,
Bhutto,
Benazir. She got assassinated, didn't she?
shot.
In
She got shot.
Rawalpindi, yeah.
Yeah, and that was dreadful. And of course, Imran went into that job foolishly. Obviously, he got shot in the leg, didn't he? The guy missed. Fortunately, it wasn't a very good shot. Um, but they've now put him in jail. I know he's never got over the 24 that I hit him off that over. Um, but
Maybe you'll write
yeah,
your postcard from jail, John.
I
Hey,
sent him a
hey,
note just to
hey,
remind him
hey,
the stats.
mystery. I'm still aware of the world record.
Oh,
Hey, anyway,
thanks.
I wanna ask you about something though. There was a really long and bad lead into this question, but for all cricketers around the world and for all fans around the world, not someone like me, I really don't care, but for people that are obsessed with kind of scoring and watching the match play, I just never want to do that job. I hate it, right?
Yeah,
But when I had to do it, I had a book in front of me, right? I had a little scorebook and I used
yeah,
to tick it off. And for quite a while now, we've had sort of digital scoring, right? Which is
yeah.
fine, of course, as long as your phone's working or your laptop's working and the battery's charged. But you told me the other day that New Zealand cricket has imposed some other website on every or app on all fans around the country that were completely used to doing it on some other app. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, I look after about three junior cricket sides, and we had got to a stage, and you did right. I grew up with the pen and the book, but we've moved on to Cricket HQ, which was pretty good. And the good thing with the junior sides have been and still am involved with was that we'd had a few parents, because I'm like you, I can't stand scoring. It's dreadful. Or do any other job at cricket, but not scoring. But anyway, they had got very good at Cricket HQ, and so we had
Over what sort of period?
scorers.
Over what sort of period, John? Like what, three
Oh,
years, 4 years?
yeah. Well, I think someone who's reasonably familiar with the techo side of things and digital stuff and pick it up quite quickly. And it's quite a Cricket HQ's been a good site and it's probably been around.
And that, that was that
Re-
was founded by Stephen Fleming and Brendan McCullum, right?
and the guy that actually played in Wellington, I've forgotten his name.
I think
It's
that
had a few
Yeah, I think
problems.
they invested in it though, right? But
Yes, they
anyway,
did.
that's by the by. But from what I understand from you, this really good system that parents and
Yeah,
kids, they know how
yeah,
to use it. Suddenly,
yeah.
it changed. Why was
Well,
that?
suddenly, beginning of last season, we got an instruction that came from New Zealand Cricket via Cricket Wellington that all games of cricket in New Zealand that are under the system had to change to this Play HQ, which is another digital setup. Now, all my parents and supporters who knew how to do the Cricket HQ, and we'd spent endless time perfecting it, and so everyone was happy. Was had no idea how to make this Play HQ work, and added to that, and I don't know much about the technical side, it wasn't fit for purpose. Um, so we spent more time last season, and I'm talking about tournaments, 3 and 4 day tournaments for under 13s and under 15s and the junior grades, etc., trying to work out with scorers going nuts because they couldn't work this Play HQ out and stopping the game for 10 minutes while we tried to sort out the
Are you
score. And
serious?
and yeah, and what irritated me the most was if we got a note to say, look, Play HQ has just sponsored all junior cricket, and we'll all benefit and we'll all get this or get that. But we've never had a notification of any benefit to us at community or junior cricket
So
to say why.
who owns this platform, John?
Well, I gather it's the ex-CEO of Australian cricket. who I can't remember his
Oh,
name.
James
And
Sutherland. Yeah, James Sutherland.
yeah, yeah. And he was quite good mates with David White,
Yeah, who's
who
not there
was
anymore. He's now
in Dubai.
making money in Dubai. Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually met David in Pakistan earlier this year, and I wasn't impressed by him at all. Not friendly, and it was really weird too, right? Actually, I met David, just in the stand. I said, "Hi, David. I'm Andrew McLean. I'm from New Zealand, etc., etc." And he was just really, really weird. But the strange thing was, I said, "Hold on, didn't you play in Pakistan?" Because I've got a pretty good memory for that sort of thing. When I was a lot
Mm.
younger, and he actually played in Pakistan, and I think it was 1990. And I actually got him on air for a while. And when he was on air talking about his experience in Pakistan, I was like, "Is that the same guy?" He was so passionate about it. I was thinking, hold on, this is the same guy that decided to bin Pakistan on the day of a match, like a year earlier.
And
Um,
fly home.
and
Yeah.
just leave home and don't even give a reason for it and never talk about it. But this is what happens, I guess, John, in all businesses. Some management comes in, thinks it's a good idea. But I'm really I feel for you, mate, because like I know what it's like. I mean, like I played cricket at Hampstead in London for what 6 or 7 years, and probably now they're using the apps. But we had a great scoreboard. We had an electronic
Yeah.
scoreboard. Well, I would never change that. I'd never change it. Just keep it the way it was. But I can imagine if you're at the Hutt Recreation Ground or Nenville Park where you and I play at Onslow, like if you're sitting on the boundary and there's no one to keep score, but someone's got a phone, great. But if it doesn't work, that's terrible. And
Yeah.
to have it forced on you is even worse.
Well, what we got to was a point where we had two, usually someone from the opposition, because everyone had finally got familiar with this Crick HQ. And then we had no idea with Play HQ. And then there was all sorts of arguments because we wanted to go back to Crick HQ, because not because, but because we could work the damn thing.
But
And
but
we
but
wanted
but
to go.
but mate, what actually happened? I mean, could you not use Crick HQ anymore? I mean, did the app die? Like McCullum, as I said, McCullum and Fleming were founders. I mean, it was a pretty decent thing. I think Heath Mills, the players executive or chairman or whatever from the association, was involved. Did it just stop overnight? Like, how
Well,
how did the
well,
directive actually happen?
Well, the directive came very much from New Zealand Cricket and was pretty harsh that you must use a system, and the Cricket Wellington and the other cricket associations all said so as well. So what you had was some people saying, "Oh, stuff it, we want to reuse Cricket HQ," others sort of towing the line and saying, well, we have to use Play HQ." So
But
that just caused
what's the benefit to use Play HQ?
good point.
Why would anyone do it though? Like if you've
That's the
got something
point.
if but what I'm trying to say is if it's like an app upgrade basically. In simple terms, it's an app upgrade. It's like we're on Zoom right now. If I get a notification come through from well, I don't know, Elon Musk or something saying I've got to change platforms, I'm not just going to change. I'll think about it. So I just don't
Yeah.
quite understand what actually happened, John. And maybe we'll leave
Well,
that for another show. Let's let's
yeah,
let's let's move on to something more well maybe I want to talk about myself here slightly. Mate, I can't understand what is happening with radio and cricket, media
yeah,
and
the
cricket.
rights issue,
Yeah,
the rights.
so let me give you a real small example, okay? And this is for our listeners, and probably this will come up, in future. Well, it will come up in future shows. So, I was actually doing commentary for a crowd called Gorilla Cricket, and I just happened to be in India when the Indian women were playing England. So it was the first 3 days. So the match is finished now, and England got hammered, and that's fine. But I was working for these guys, well, working, I say volunteering and just enjoying
Mm.
it. And then anyway, so the first 2 days was great, right? India made like, I don't know, 450 or something they made. And then England got through to stumps and they were not in a great position. Anyway, TalkSport, which is a massive UK player, like it's probably the biggest commercial biggest commercial sports radio station in the world outside of North America, probably. Definitely in cricket. They came out with an announcement that they've got the rights live and exclusive. And I was thinking, hold on a sec, how's it exclusive? We're already doing it. So I don't, and if our good friend Daniel McCarty, who hopefully he'll be listening to this when we're actually not recording this. We're recording it live, but we'll post it later. But I spoke to Daniel recently about this issue. He said, I can't really comment or commentate without the ambient sound. And I was like, that sort of makes sense. But he also doesn't get the benefit of speaking to players. So I was trying to think, like, I'm watching the TV for guerrilla cricket, right? I'm just watching the screen. By the way, I'm in India, listeners, at the moment. So same time watching the screen. And in Daniel's example, who's a New Zealander from Wellington, like John and I, he just wants to hear the ambient sound. But my point is that, does it really make that much difference? And what is that difference worth that TalkSport comes in on day 3 when the match is about to end with live and exclusive rights? It's just bonkers, mate. It's bonkers. Well, and why do they not start on day 1?
What's happened to radio for cricket worldwide, Andrew? I mean, there's virtually no radio in India, isn't there? I mean, I find that extraordinary.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I as you know, I went to Dominica back in July, and part of the reason why I went is because I'm hunting around for commentary opportunities, which I think everyone on Twitter knows that, so I don't mind saying that. But I got there, and there was one guy. There was actually two. There was one guy who was just running around filming everything, and he's one of these sort of semi-controversial guys, but he's got a big following on YouTube or whatever. So he's not really a media guy. But I assumed there'd be a bunch of journalists there. I thought there'd be radio people there. There was no one there. There was just one guy, Raunak Kapoor, but he was doing TV. I was just like completely shocked, and I said to Raunak, I said, "What's happened? Why is no one interested? Why is All India Radio not taking the feed of India against the West Indies? Why are they not taking it?" He basically said to me something along the lines of, "They're just not interested in India anymore because of that. India has capitulated." He didn't say this, by the way. But this was my interpretation. They've God, I can't get the words out eventually. They've capitulated into like this whole 2020 mindset, a video here, a tweet there, and no one really, follows it anymore. But I'm thinking to myself, and this is a live example. Yesterday in Goa, I had a taxi driver. He had to drive me for an hour. He said to me, "I always listen to the cricket on the radio, but I can't listen to it anymore because no one does it."
No, well, my example, Andrew, was during the World Cup. Of course, in our time in New Zealand, it was obviously it was overnight most games, and I remember the first game, New Zealand versus England, and I was looking forward to it. And I was with a junior team up in Hawke's Bay, and we were staying in a boarding establishment, so there was no TVs, and it was fairly Spartan to say the least. And I thought, well, I'll listen all night, or sort of all night, or have it on, and it'll be quite interesting.
You'll put your headphones in, and that's what a lot of New Zealand men do, but just simply because of the time. I'm not trying to suggest that women don't, but because of the time delay between Asia and New Zealand, which at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
moment is 5.5 hours. So like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, a lot of Kiwi blokes would just put their earphones in and fall asleep, and I assume that's what you wanted to do, right? But it wasn't
Well, it was
possible.
because I can't remember the exact time. But let's say the start time was 10 p.m. And so I was trying to fiddle around to get something to get a commentary. And, and I thought maybe it's me being a sicko here because I don't know much about the ticker. But AM, FM, so I thought, God, there's no bloody commentary. And then I made a few inquiries, and I think I sent a note to you as well, but there was no commentary. I thought, my God, there was no commentary, and we're playing a World Cup, the opening World Cup match against England. And of
Yeah,
course,
it didn't make sense for me either, mate. And but that's
so that was the
that
case.
well, that's something we'll talk about probably in a later show. But what I can say, there was a really excellent article by Will McPherson in the Telegraph, the UK
Mm,
version, not that cheap convict version in Australia. But he actually wrote a really good article, and there was a passage in the his article which said that when England toured Bangladesh earlier this year, which I think was about probably March, that neither the BBC nor TalkSport nor Sky nor sorry, forget about radio. Sky Sky were not planning to cover it, right? And you know this where I'm going with this, right? And we probably
mm,
can't cover it on this series, but Sky TV were not planning to cover it. But the ECB stepped in and they said, and we didn't know this at the time, and Will's done amazing work to find this out because I was shocked when I read it. I was like, shit, is that actually true? I I don't think boards step in to do this. I always wanted them to, but they actually stepped in and made sure that the English public or the British public or UK and Northern Ireland public, or however you want to frame it, got to see pictures of the series. And then in Will's article, he said it was a six-figure sum, right? And
mm.
to go back to your point, why did New Zealand cricket not step in during the World Cup to at least ensure we had radio commentary? Why did they not do it? And to go a step further, just before the World Cup, we had a 3-test series in Bangladesh. All the New Zealand fans could watch was a YouTube feed, and it's okay. I'm not. It's not a problem, but it's a mindset thing, isn't it, John?
Oh, I think it's quite extraordinary because stats around the world tell us that cricket is second to football as the most followed and watched game. And there are so many, if you take the enthusiasm of obviously the Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, there's a huge number around the world in non-cricket areas like the US. There's about 30 million Indians in the US, and they want to follow cricket, but of course it's not on mainstream media. So that's why Cricinfo is so popular, and the radio would solve all that problem.
But
And everybody's
do you think it's a position of a cricket board to ensure that their home fans get to hear or see the actual matches?
Well, I do because I think that while you're dealing with the media, one side is to look at the money, and obviously you want as much as you can get, but the other side is to look after your fans so they can get to watch and listen because everyone's not in front of a TV their whole life. You know, most of us live all over the place, and I know when cricket's on in my car, I really enjoy it because I'm hopping in and out of it all day, and you pick up
Absolutely.
on scores.
Imagine if you're a sales guy driving around Auckland like my mate Jeff Hunt. Anyway, John, look,
Yeah,
we've come to the top of the show. Great to connect again after what was it? What did I say? 17 years. But anyway, this was the first episode of the Great Cricket Debate on Global Cricket Radio. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, good stuff, mate.